I was very surprised at the reception. I wasn't expecting anything quite that big, and I only regret that I didn't have more time to stay there with them. But maybe someday I can come back when my Army tour is up as an entertainer, and then I'll have more time, and maybe I'll have an opportunity to kind of make myself at home over here. Arrivederci. Oh, that's Italian.
Elvis was assigned duty as a Jeep driver, the perfect assignment for a man who loved cars as much as he did. He was rewarded for his diligence by being promoted to corporal. Despite the public hype surrounding him, Elvis behaved just like any other soldier. He carried a gun and he pulled KP, and even did guard duty, which was not a wise assignment. Because Elvis was so famous in Europe, whenever he was exposed to the public, they appeared in droves. One night, a huge crowd gathered when Elvis was doing guard duty at a military entrance. He was standing as ordered, but was surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of fans. It practically took a platoon to rescue him. Elvis's Army MOS was as a tank gunner, which seemed to be a more appropriate assignment. Elvis loved guns, and these were big ones. But there was a problem. Because the guns were so loud, he began suffering from ringing ears and at times seemed to be deaf. Eventually, Elvis was taken out of the tanks. Elvis was permitted to live off base with his family during his tour in Germany. He rented a modest house where he lived with his father and grandmother. Regularly, he'd invite fellow soldiers over for jam sessions. One of Elvis's army buddies invited a young girl, Priscilla Bailu. It was love at first sight when Elvis met the girl that would one day be his wife. In May 1960, Elvis returned to Hollywood to begin shooting GI Blues. The film was enormously successful, and the soundtrack album reached #1 quickly, remaining on the charts longer than any other Elvis Presley album. Movie critics approved of his new image and predicted he would find plenty of new fans amongst older women. Elvis didn't share the critics' enthusiasm for GI Blues. He felt that there were too many musical numbers and believed some of them made no sense within the context of the plot. He was also concerned that the quality of many of these songs were not as good as the music in his earlier films. His manager pushed Presley into a heavy movie-making schedule. Focusing Wild in the Country, both flopped at the box office. He then reverted to the low-budget soundtrack formula. In the press, she became known as the girl he left behind. When questioned at a press conference back in the States, Elvis denied that any type of romance was going on between him and Priscilla. Well before he came home, America had already begun preparing for the return of Elvis Presley. Even though he had spent 2 years making a record or a public appearance, Elvis still ruled the record charts.
I understand that you want to become a dramatic actor, is that right?
Well, so that's my big ambition now. It takes a lot of time, a lot of experience, but I hope I'll make it. I mean, that's what I want to do.
And do you feel that you want to fashion yourself after Sinatra or perhaps James Dean?
I wouldn't want to fashion myself after any one individual because I would like to develop my own technique. You know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I admire Mr. Sinatra. I think he's a great actor and all that. But I wouldn't want to pattern myself after any individual.
All this means, of course, that some of your music will lose, perhaps. You'll be doing fewer records?
No, sir, it doesn't mean that, because I wouldn't want to give up singing. I'm only saying that I would like to become a good actor. You know.
He was coming home to the United States as an even bigger star than when he had left. When Elvis returned to the public spotlight in 1960, it was obvious that he had matured both physically and professionally. As time would tell, Elvis was a changed man when he emerged from the army. He surprised everyone by trading in the frenzied trappings of his rock and roll youth for a more mature image, built on the good publicity from his tour of duty.
Elvis, do you plan to make a picture about your experiences in the Army or about the Army at all? Well, my first picture is called GI Blues, oddly enough. And the story takes place in Germany, but it's not about my actual experience.
The success of his forthcoming movies and pop music albums were testament to the wide appeal of this new, more mellow-styled Elvis. Elvis was honourably discharged from active duty on March 5, 1960. He received his mustering out cheque of $109 US, and he could now return to the life and career he had left behind. Presley had now won the hearts and minds of his mainstream press and general public. When Elvis released his biggest hit ever, It's Now or Never, he received airplay on conservative audience. Elvis wasn't the only Presley to find a new love in Germany.